Most handheld routers will come with a guide bush as part of it when you buy it originally. Often they can actually be very tall and too tall for the kind of jig that you are using. This one also, manufacturing wasn't all that accurate. I've had to actually regrind the side of this to try and get it centered within my router. The guide bush system we have, the AUK guide bush, is based on the Porter cable design. What we have here is a whole set of nicely and accurately machined brass guide bushes, and these will fit into a router table or into one of the Lee adapter plates. You'll need to buy an appropriate adapter plate for your router. Once we've got the router plate, that would be fixed into the bottom of your router, and then we would attach the guide bush with the threaded nut that we have, tighten him down, and we can now use him within your router. Our setup comes with 2 of the threaded adapters, so we could have one set up in a router and another set up in a router table if necessary. And the adapter plates come in a variety of sizes. The smallest one is 10mm, going through to the largest one, which is a 30mm outside diameter. If we've made ourselves a template, we could use a bearing cutter to run the bearing along the template and produce exactly the same shape on the piece that we're making. If we were to use a guide bush, then we can get the guide bush to run along the template, and then we can use a cutter of a smaller diameter to follow that same shape but give us an offset from that template. Therefore we could make a rebate or a different size to the original template that we have. If I'd had a template made up and I wanted to form a hole in a piece of solid timber underneath, I would have to cut out majority of the waste first with maybe the pillar drill and a jigsaw, and then when I came to use my bearing, I'd have to make sure my bearing was in contact completely with the template so I could come round and do a cut. But it wouldn't necessarily be a trimming cut because it depends how good or bad my jigsawing was. If I'm using a guide bush, when I plunge my router in, I can actually plunge and just do a small depth cut and leading up to the full depth cut if I want to. The guide bush is going to follow around the template whilst my cutter is doing the work. And again, we can take just a small cut depth-wise, a second cut, and then a third cut to go all the way through the timber if we need to. We don't have to do it in a one depth cut as we would do with the bearing. We need to consider how big the outer diameter of the guide bush is and how big the router cutter is that's going through it. If we've got a 30mm guide bush and we're using a 10mm cutter, then we can have a 10mm offset from both sides, leaving the 10mm of the cutter in the centre. So we could use a 10mm cutter to take out most of our waste of our piece, and then we could actually increase that and put a larger diameter cutter in. If we did some trimming cuts on our template we got here, and I put in maybe a 18mm cutter and went all the way around my template, and then used the same guide bush but put in a 19mm cutter and went all the way around the template, what I would now do is take a 0.5mm skim off all the way around my piece of cut timber. This leaves a fantastically clean finish and will leave minimal tear out, burning, and leave just a little bit of timber to be sanded for the final finish. You can also use the guide bushes with things like our circular template. Again, putting the guide bush in here and varying the size of the cut you have will vary the size of the circle being produced. You can check out the full video for the template, and also we have links for our other templates in the description below. The guide bush set is metric and starts from a 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 24 and a 30mm outer diameter. So we have a good range of metric sizes within the setup. If you want more information about this, check it out on our website, woodworkersworkshop.co.uk, and also follow us on social media.